Yes. Yeah, I can hear you better now. I'm on my cell this time. I actually was on a hard line before, and I could hardly hear you at all.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
Welcome to the show. I know how busy your schedule is.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. I was looking over your website and all the information here, and I just had to let you know I'm very impressed with everything I've read about your biography and all your platform issues. Could you first introduce yourself to my listeners, give them a little background information about yourself?
Certainly, I'd be glad to. I am running for U.S. Congress in Georgia's 13th District, a district that comprises parts of 6 counties from the east to the west outside of the city of Atlanta. None of the city of Atlanta is included. I am a family physician by trade and by education, of course, currently serving as the medical director of Clayton State University's Health Center. I am a conservative candidate, a Republican, a constitutionalist, a person who is looking to help our country get back on track.
What had some background, obviously, before campus. What made you decide to get involved in this issue?
I sure would like to answer that question, but you're going in and out, and I can hardly hear you at all.
Sorry for that. I saw that you had the background. You've been involved in many campaigns before. What made you decide to run this time?
Well, I'm running because our district needs much better representation. But as I've run before in 06 and 08, in this district, it was a gerrymandered district, simply given up to Democratic control, and people had not said, "Look, we're very conservative in this district." I looked at the incumbent's record and saw that it did not truly reflect the record of the people in the district. When I ran in 06, much to most people's surprise, as I read, without any political experience except in the realm of physicians, and ended up getting 30% of the vote.
Wow.
Much to everyone's surprise. In 08, that tsunami of progressive liberal thought knocked many conservatives out of the block, so to speak, and I was one of them. Nonetheless, I gained more than twice as many votes in 08 than I did in 06. But now people who had been disgruntled conservatives, who had been, for instance, independents, who said, well, let's try hope and change and see what happens, found that their hopes were dashed and the change they got was nothing that they had bargained for. And so now the situation is, again, ripe for those who are truly conservatives and truly want to make a difference for the people that they represent to come to the fore. And so here I am continuing to stand in the gap. It's not that I just said, oh, it's going to be a good year for conservatives, as I've seen happen in other instances. Solid conservatives still standing there and standing up for conservative principles.
As someone with a medical background, how do you look at this health care bill, and how will it affect affect care for patients?
Having seen medicine from many different aspects, from the aspect of being a physician educator, small group practices, larger group practices, private practice, solo practice of my own, I know that the health care bill that we have is not what we need, and it will definitely lead us into socialized medicine. Okay. It's not that I've never seen socialized medicine. I have. I've been in the offices of physicians in other countries where socialized medicine is practiced, only to see the downfalls of socialized medicine. In particular, in Scotland, as I visited a physician, The woman was able to get her medicines for her hypertension, her chronic diseases, but when asked about her gallbladder, that had given her so much problem, she told the physician, "Oh, that's taken care of. I went to," and she named another country, and had her gallbladder taken out. And I don't want to see our country, which has the most excellent medical system in the entire world. Not that there are areas that need to be improved, but
right.
Think about when anyone else in the other world wants something done excellently, including leaders of other countries, where do they come? They come here.
Right.
So we've got to make sure that care is available to every one of our citizens,
mm-hmm.
and it can be done in ways other than the Health Care Reform Act that we've had pushed upon us.
Would you vote to repeal that if you were elected to Congress?
I would definitely vote to repeal that. I don't know whether that vote would actually ever come to the fore. I think a more effective way is going to be simply to starve it to death. Do not fund it. If it doesn't get funded, it will not get implemented. And, of course, there are a number of organizations who have already started litigation with regards to the constitutionality of that act, and that takes time. But I think in the short term, and if a vote does not come up to repeal it, I think starving it to death is the way to go.
Yeah, in our state, the Attorney General actually, brought a lawsuit here in Michigan. Did the Attorney General ever break and go ahead and file the lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of the health care bill?
Yes, in Georgia, yes, and also in Georgia there is now a law that you do not have to get health care insurance. And, of course, now that law is going to be challenged because
right.
It's not in keeping with the federal law, but Georgia has even gone that far.
Right. Speaking of some other issues that we have going on here in America right now as far as our immigration situation, and also because I'm sure that affects Georgia, probably not to the extent, obviously, of Arizona and places like that, but what would you do to strengthen the border security and and fight the immigration problems we have here in America?
I think we need to enforce the laws that we have. We need to secure our borders, both on our southern border and our northern border, keeping in mind that we are a sovereign country. It's interesting when I go to visit other countries, even going to visit Africa, I had to have a passport and I had to have a visa. They had
right.
to know where I was going, who I was going to stay with, and how long I was going to be there. Our United States is a sovereign country. There is absolutely no reason that we cannot know who is coming across our borders. Now, I'm not talking about sealing off our borders. No, not insulating ourselves. I'm simply talking about making it such that as those who cross our borders cross, we know who they are, where they're going, why they're here, just like if you were to go to France or any other country.
Exactly.
That's the first start, because it is a problem of, the immigration problem is a problem of security, our national security, and that's the vein in which I see it.
Yeah, they try to make it more of a racial issue or anything like that, but right now it's imperative that we secure all our borders. Would you agree with what the governor of Arizona has done as far as enacting basically her own laws to help protect their state?
I agree with the intent of the Arizona law, and certainly there are going to be legal minds that say, well, you can't make a state law that overrides the federal law if the federal law is doing it. But all the Arizonans were saying is the federal government is not enforcing our laws, so we will go ahead and do it. And so I certainly do agree with that. It is not an issue of race. It is not an issue of racism. It is an issue of security, national security, and in Arizona, the security of their state and the citizens of their state.
Exactly. And I'm looking through here on as far as your educational stance. You have an education background. You've been a teacher. I'm from Detroit, and I'm a product of Detroit public school systems. Do you feel it's important that we introduce more options for parents, schools of choice, or do you think we just need to work on improving just strictly the public school systems throughout the country?
I think it is parents that should determine where their children and how their children are educated. I think the problem with the entire education system is it has been taken out of the hands of parents and given to government. It's in the wrong hands. We need to put it back into the hands of parents. And then parents will demand that schools that are run by the government, i.e. Public schools, will get better. Parents will demand, well, I want my child to go to this maybe charter school over here. Parents will demand the government schools, the public schools will get better when the control is put back into the hands of parents, and the parents will make the demands to increase the quality of education in all schools, be they faith-based, charter schools, magnet schools, or whatever.
Right. Do you think that the charter schools and magnet schools, do you think they actually make the public schools more accountable? Because, I mean, they don't have any competition, and that's why they're allowed to have, the policies and the results that they've been having so far with no one to account to.
I think there are several reasons why the public school system is not turning out the level and quality of students that we want. We certainly have in Georgia a problem with only about half of our students even graduating from the public school system. But competition always makes things better. So the competition of faith-based schools, of homeschooling, of public school, of the charter schools, of the magnet schools will make our public schools better. Additionally, our public schools are currently top-heavy in administrators.
Right.
And I know that we must get back to putting the emphasis on the teacher and the student. Much like in medicine, we must keep the emphasis on the patient and the physician. In education, we must keep the emphasis on the student and the teacher and take away some of the many layers of administrative personnel that drain the system of money, whereas the money should be going to the student's education and to the teacher educating that student.
Right, exactly. And looking at, are you for the? We obviously need tax reform in this country. Would you be willing to look at the fair tax legislation that's been, through each state? They're, proposing fair tax, and obviously across the country. Is that something you would be willing to look at?
Well, I'm so glad and happy that you asked that because I have been a long-time proponent of fair tax, to the point that Fair Tax Organization has had me speak both regionally and within our state about the merits of fair tax. And one thing that I really like about fair tax is it truly helps people of low and middle income, because you get all of your money in your check. It may be a small check, but it's not going to be cut in half by FICA and everybody else taking their part. You get all of your money. You get to decide how you're going to spend it. Fair tax is a consumption tax on new goods and services. So if you decide you're going to buy a used car, you don't pay any tax.
Right.
We have children who like that vintage style clothing and whatnot, and they love to shop in thrift stores for used clothing. And those are ways that we can begin in communities that have lower and middle income citizens. We can begin to think now about wealth building. You have your money. Now, what can you do with your money? Where can you save your money? Where can you invest your money rather than all of your money being spent and hopefully it lasting till the end of the month? For some people, it doesn't. But we can begin to think about wealth building and the legacy of wealth that we can pass on to our children.
Right. Now, that leading into that, just listening to that, I want to kind of tie that into what I was reading about your urban initiatives. Mm-hmm. And I'm feeling like that's something, again, especially in the African American community. It's just that we're not taught that from our parents because they weren't taught that. Where do you start with educating young people and financial literacy, making people understand how important that is to wealth building and passing something on to your next generations?
I think you start with I know you start with children.
Okay.
That's where we have to start with children. And change always comes slower than we think, than we would want it to come. But you start with children, teaching them the value of putting away for a rainy day like my grandparents used to teach me. Today we kind of spend everything right now for something that we think we want. But the value of saving towards something, putting away for that rainy day and hope it doesn't rain this year, those kinds of things. We do have to start with children. However, it doesn't mean with adults we say, hey, you're past learning. Certainly they're not. Even older adults can begin to say, all right, it's going to be a change in the way that I'm thinking and the change in the way that I've normally been acting. But I can take a little bit here, and I'm going to save it. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to save it. As black folks, many of us don't know anything about the stock market, how it works, why it works, if it works. We don't know about investing. Some of us don't even know anything about buying bonds. And I think that's a lesson that I want to teach in the minority community, especially where we have a greater percentage of lower and middle income families, so that we can begin to see that part of the American dream that has eluded us for so long.
Exactly. And also part of this, obviously with the urban initiative and something that's important to me and it's obviously important to you, is being pro-life. Where do you stand on that? What do you think we can do to improve the conditions of basically, in my area, it's almost 2 out of every 5, black children are aborted. What can we do to improve those numbers and obviously give these young people more options?
One of the things that we have to do is we actually have to talk about it.
Okay.
And one of the areas that I would have thought we would hear a lot more about the life, the sanctity of life, is in our churches. But you seldom hear it.
Don't get me started.
Seldom hear it. So with that venue not being as open as I would have thought it should be, we do have to use other venues. We do have to use the home especially. So that means we have to educate not only children, young people, but older adults. Many older adults do not know that African Americans are only 12% of the population, and of that 12%, only 5 to 6% of the population, not of the 12%, 5 to 6% of the population is African Americans of childbearing age. Right. That 5 to 6% of our American population has 40% of the abortion.
Yeah,
talk about disproportionate.
Every time I give out that statistic to people, a lot of people just they can't even digest that. 5% of the childbearing community accounted for 40% of abortions. It's genocide.
It certainly is genocide. And when we look back, as African Americans, we are proud of our history. But when we look back at our history, we sometimes forget that the Black Panthers were started because of abortion clinics moving into the black community. At that time, they talked about black genocide. They knew of Margaret Sanger.
Right.
They knew of the history of Planned Parenthood and its many Planned Parenthood clinics that in some areas do provide some health services, but many areas the health services are a cover for the abortion services.
Exactly.
So education here again is the key, making an awareness of, hey, we are killing ourselves. We're going down in population as a group of people. Not growing. We are literally going down in our total population.
Why do you think the black churches have stayed away from that issue so much? I'll say the larger ones anyway. Why do you think they've stayed away from that issue, and how come they haven't made it, more of an upfront thing that we, obviously need to introduce to the community and talk about more?
If I knew the answer to that question, I would have them talking about it more. But that's still an answer that eludes me, and I will continue to encourage pastors to bring this out into the fore. I know that other health problems have been brought out into the fore. Pastors have said, take care of your health, your chronic problems, don't overeat, don't overdrink. I am still waiting and trying to help them to get to the point to say, don't kill your children. That has not in the past, before 1973, been a thing that happened in the black community. Before then, we knew someone who was going down south for the summer, who was seeming a little pudgy before she left, would come back. She would have had her baby, and someone would be raising her baby, whether it was she herself, her sister, her auntie. Someone would be raising that child. That child's life would not have been snuffed out. I hear many people ask me, well, where are your leaders of the African American community now? Where are they? Well, some of them, tragically, might be in that silver little bucket at the knees of the abortionists.
Right. Yeah, that is an unfortunate situation, and again, sometimes I think they just don't want to scare away membership, don't want to offend people, but the truth is the truth. It's almost the same with, family issues and, homosexuality and everything, and among those social issues that they seem to might want to step away from that might offend people in their church and maybe losing membership. That's my personal take on it, that they just don't want to offend people, and they want to bring more people in, but don't want to turn anyone away or offend anyone, I guess.
We do have a group of clergy from across the country, led by Bishop Harry Jackson and others who are stepping forward, a small but growing group, growing in numbers and growing in influence. We have a group of politically active Christians led by Dean Nelson, and all of these groups are converging, so to speak, on these problems that are killing especially people in our African American community. But one of the things I like about my urban initiative as I use it to show African Americans that it's okay to vote conservatively because they live their lives conservatively. And so one of the things I like about the urban initiative, it is not an initiative that is only for a certain group of people. Although it has the name Urban Initiative, it can be generalized to any group of people. So the aspects of jobs and economics, the aspects of financial literacy education, the aspect of education, improvement in education, as well as giving the responsibility and the right to choose education back to parents, and even things such as transportation, especially in the minority community. Just having transportation to get to the job can often be a problem. So, but these are things that can be generalized to any community and can be honed in to the black community to its benefit.
Right, and I think that's another thing that, again, in our community, we do live conservative with it, through our faith and everything else that's involved in our decision-making process. Where's the disconnect, and what do you think we can do to bring more people to, African Americans to the Republican Party, which is our original party? What can we do to open more eyes and connect the dots between the conservative values of the party and conservative values in the African American community?
We must each individually keep talking to the people that we know. We must not be silent when people around us start talking about the Democrats this and the Democrats that.
Right.
We must continue to be able to say, well, you know what? As I remember, it was the Democrats that hosed you. It was the Democrats that dogs on you. It was the Democrats that threw you in jail. So go back and look at history and say, oh, wait a minute. That certainly was those Democrats. Then I also have people, they say, well, why are you Republican? And I'll tell them right off the bat, I believe in this, this, and this, and this, and this, and these things are consistent with the principles of the Republican Party. Now I ask you, why are you a Democrat?
That's the thing I do. That's exactly.
And they're usually unable to answer. And then when I ask them, well, did you know that pro-abortion is in the Democratic planks for the party, the platform for their party? No, it isn't. I say, I'll tell you what, let's look it up. And sometimes people have to see it for themselves. Right. And when people begin to see it for themselves, and I tell them, okay, you vote Democrat, your mom and daddy did, and maybe your grandfather did also, but I bet you your great-grandfather was a Republican. Oh, no. Well, look it up and see. So I
love getting the argument started, telling people MLK was a Republican. It gets the big argument going. My in-laws, they stay mad at me whenever I make that comment. But you got to make people think about it and actually do some research.
And that's the thing. You have to bring an awareness to people and help them to think, help them to want to delve in and see what the truth is. We've been told many lies along the way as black people, and some of those lies have led us to the point where we are now, where we are enslaved to, many of us are enslaved to a welfare system that gives us a piece of check, and I say a piece of check because it's not much money to live off of. Right. A piece of check, a welfare system that has completely killed the desire to do better in many people. And I speak from seeing this as a physician, people third and fourth generation in the welfare system, where they desire, they don't know anything else, don't know that they have talents that can be used in ways to enhance their lives and the lives of others and bring themselves out of that system. So we have to keep helping people to a greater awareness, to be educated, that they have talents that can grow and grow. Maybe they can even grow into a small business where they can not only support themselves, but leave something for their children. You know, the Bible says in Proverbs that a good man leaves an inheritance for his children's children.
Wow.
And that's one thing that we have yet to really grasp onto as a group of people. Certainly there are some of us, African Americans, who have done it, but as a group, and I want to see our entire group as African Americans be able to leave inheritances, a solid spiritual inheritance, a solid economic inheritance, solid education inheritance for our children's children.
Right. Well said. Now, if someone wants to know more about your campaign, they want to contribute or volunteer, what will the website be and where do they need to go?
www.honeycuttforcongress.com, HONEYCUTTFOR, Congress.com. Come there anytime. Let's be Facebook friends. You'll learn even a lot more about me on Facebook from many of our supporters. That's www.honeycuttforcongress.com. And contact us there. We have a continual, ever-open line for you to be able to contribute, whatever you want to contribute, and make donations to the victory for Honeycutt for Congress.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Honeycutt, for coming on the show. You're an inspiration to me and plenty of other people, I am sure. I want to thank your campaign manager, Michael, for having you come on this evening. Again,
I want to thank him, too.
He's
a great
schedule is. He's sharp. He really is, and I'm glad. It's inspirational to me to see young gentlemen like that making moves and being very helpful to your campaign. So thank you so much for coming on. Can you give them the website address one more time, just in case they weren't writing it down fast enough?
Here we go. HoneycuttForCongress.com, HoneycuttForCongress.com.
Thank you so much. Good luck with the campaign, and God bless you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that was Dr. Honeycutt, who is running for Congress in the 13th District. My next guest, and I think he's calling in right now, I'm going to bring him on the line, is Chris. I want to make sure I'm saying his name right. Chris Nwasike. I'm going to bring you on. Chris.
Hey, Wayne, how are you, buddy?
All right, how are you doing, sir?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Great. I was just introducing you to the show. Go ahead and give us your name, because I didn't want to mess it up there. I want you to give us a background and what made you decide to run for Congress.
Well, my name is Chris Nwasike, so you were very close there with the last name. You did a great job, actually.
Thank you.
I'm running for Congress to represent the 3rd Congressional District of Florida. I'm a candidate of conviction. I got in this race because my heart bleeds for the district that I live in. I want to, immediately impact fellow constituents within the 3rd Congressional District of Florida. I strongly believe in economic empowerment, and one of the things that we don't have in the 3rd Congressional District is economic opportunity. We've got about 11.9% of the people, or 11.9% unemployment percentage numbers, and unofficial it's almost coming as high as 50%.
Right.
So it's a reason why 26% of our constituents don't have access to healthcare coverage. Which was one of the reasons that Congresswoman Corrine Brown gave for voting for the health care bill. But if we had access to economic opportunity or economic development, we would economically develop a 3rd district where people were able to work for themselves, be small business owners, entrepreneurs, figure out stuff for themselves. They would be able to have access to health care coverage, and we wouldn't be, the out of 25 congressional districts, the poorest, according to income, within the 25 congressional districts of the state of Florida, the average median income in the 3rd congressional district is about $29,000 or $30,000, just to use round numbers. So the quality of life within the 3rd district is appalling, and those are the reasons that I really got in the race, because I really want to see a difference in my community, and I think that I live in the district, and I can best articulate the concerns of other constituents as well in D.C.
Hey, you're not a career politician or anything like that. What's your background, as of right now? Where were you working at? And, give us a little bit more insight on that.
So I'm an investment banker by profession. I'm a licensed investment banker. And, prior to that, while I was doing investment banking, my wife and I also invested in real estate, and I floated an IT company. Prior to that, I was a regional sales manager for the largest privately held rental car company in North America.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I've got a lot of business experience. I also chair the Northwest Jacksonville Economic Development Trust Fund. It's an advisory board set up to work with the mayor of Jacksonville, and it manages a $6 million trust fund poised to create or stimulate economic development within the Northwest Jacksonville quadrant, which falls within the 3rd Congressional District. So, working with finances is something that I've been doing for a long time. Working to better my community. I've volunteered for a lot of activities. I'm a Rotarian. I belong to the Rotary Club of North Jacksonville here. I in March this year spearheaded a Keep God in America rally. It was a 3-day campaign just to showcase America's rich Judeo-Christian history. I'm also my term's actually coming to an end at the end of June, but I'm also the president of the Duval County Young Republicans.
Okay.
The first black president in the history of Duval County, as far as the Young Republicans are concerned, and then a couple of other things that I've worked on civically. So I'm no novice to community development. I'm no novice to community organizing. Very active in the First Coast Tea Party that we have down here, and I just see that that my community, my district where I live, has needs that are not being met, and I feel like I'm the best person that could address those needs, taking their concerns to D.C.
Right.
And,
if you were elected to Congress, how would you feel about this health care bill? Would you try to repeal it?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I was talking about that with someone earlier this afternoon on the campaign trail. I don't believe that government needs to be the nucleus of this health care bill. I think that small businesses we can solve the problem of our healthcare if we're given the opportunity to. The argument is, small business had an opportunity to, or businesses have had an opportunity to for a long time, and they didn't correct it. That still doesn't warrant government getting in the middle of it. Anything that we've seen in the history of America, anytime the government gets into the middle of anything, it never gets done and never gets done right.
Right.
It's always over budget and outside of schedule. And so, I don't support this healthcare legislation in any shape or form with the government being the centerpiece or the nucleus of the project. I think we should let small business do what small business does, and basically come up with a scheme which is already out there, just being ignored, of pooling systems where people pool together and get the best coverages in their communities, and have a shared network system that they can use to track primary care physicians or specialists across the United States. I find it hard to swallow that the government will be at the centerpiece of any healthcare program. I just think it's a major financial catastrophe in the making.
I agree, and I spoke with I don't know if you were listening in the earlier interview with Dr. Deborah Honeycutt, and we talked a lot about being pro-life, and I see that that's something that you're very passionate about too. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Since 60s or 70s, there've been over 52 million abortions in the United States. I was just talking about that again this evening on my blog talk show, but 2 out of every 5 pregnancies in the African American community end in abortion. 2 out of every 5 pregnancies in the African American community end in abortion. Less than or just about 1% of the total abortions in the United States happen as a result of complications in the pregnancy that can affect or potentially, affect the mother's life.
Right.
Everything else, every other reason out there is choice. Abortion is the number one killer in the United States. It outpaces cancer, heart attack, stroke. And it's something that we're not even paying attention to.
Right.
And it's really something that concerns me. According to the Center for Disease Control, Florida, the state of Florida ranks number 3 in abortions as a state, compared with the other states in the union. It's definitely something that really concerns me. I believe life begins at conception, and I don't support any form of federal funding, to promote abortion at all.
You actually said something here, and I'm like, I've been suggesting this for a while, and I looked at it. You said, I believe in funding the education for abstinence programs. Why aren't we doing that already? I don't understand that. Why do we place so much emphasis on safe sex as opposed to actually abstinence?
That's a very, very good question. Last year, August, in Jacksonville, in Duval County, Florida, I put on a religion and government forum, and I had a panel of pastors and elected officials and a couple of chairmen of local Republican parties and state parties. And we were talking about that, and we posed the question to the panel. We said, abstinence or safe sex. And and some of the responses that we got were extremely disappointing, but they were more coming from the perspective like, America is where America is today. Abstinence just doesn't work. It's proven. It's tried and proven. Doesn't work. Let's just go towards safe sex. Well, according to a Zogby poll, it was about the mid-70s, 76 or 77% of parents actually prefer, or higher, actually prefer that their children are taught abstinence.
Right.
Another large percentage of parents that were polled, we even prefer that their kids know that sex is something that's reserved for marriage or a relationship towards marriage. 70%, about 70% or thereabouts of teens that have been surveyed that engaged in sexual activity between the ages of 13 and 16 actually regret having started sexual activity that early. They wish they waited. We need to stop, pretending that we don't have a problem with early sexual activity and teenage pregnancies and address it head on. It's something that we really, need to get involved in. It's education. It's healthy. If you look at health statistics, you find out that some of the age demographic most impacted by sexually transmitted diseases are teenagers up to the age of 25.
Right.
So we've got to teach them abstinence. It's the only way that we can create a more responsible society where kids are making the right choices. Kids that are born in single families or to single parents are 7 times more likely to end up in poverty,
right.
Than if they were born into a single home. So, we have statistics. We have the facts out there. We just choose to ignore it, and instead of attacking the problem head on, we wait for the problem to occur, and then we start trying to teach, conventional methods. And, it goes back, into faith and what I strongly believe, and my faith, does not encourage fornication. It encourages, abstaining from it, and that's why I believe that.
They're actually passing out condoms in schools now to kids. And
absolutely, it's ridiculous.
And I told my wife, they were talking about like 2nd and 3rd graders and stuff are getting. I said, the minute that happens, homeschool or we'll be at somebody's private school, because that's just not, that's not acceptable. Like you said, instead of placing so much emphasis on that, you ought to place a lot more emphasis on abstinence education.
Absolutely, and that's why I strongly support it. And not only can we look at it from a statistical perspective, if we look at the economic impact that we have with teenage pregnancies, and we can break it down by county, it's alarming the amount of dollars that we spend each year working with teen parents.
Right.
that end up pregnant as a result of teenage sexual activity, not being informed. And we've got to teach. We've got to explain to the next generation coming up, and they're eager to listen about the implications of engaging in sexual activity at such a young age. It's not just we have Hollywood described right now, where it's just it happens and it's done and life goes on. No, you are not connected to this person, and God forbid, they have health challenges associated with them, that are sexually transmittable. Then you get up and oh my gosh, you're scarred for life. Yeah.
What do you think we can do? Kind of moving away a little bit from that. But like I said, I can appreciate that you do not hide your Christianity. I think a lot of politicians nowadays move away from that. What do you think we can do to get America back on track as far as business? There are a lot of things that we can obviously do. Are you a proponent of the fair tax?
There's the fair tax and there's a flat tax. But what I do know is that America's tax system is broken. It's a tax system right now that puts a burden on the American family, and we're getting hints from Washington D.C. that they would like to increase our taxes, even further. And if you look at the American family cycle, the American family, one of according to family statistics, one of the biggest challenges or points of strain within the marriage is finances. Well, now we have a government that's looking to increase taxes for Middle America, and so the average the little overage in after expenses that we had for just our livelihood, spend money on the things that kind of after we've met all our financial obligations, just to kind of have fun with the family. Little dollars that we had now, the government's actually stepping in and saying, oh, well, I want that too. I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ludicrous. I think it's obscene that we have a government that's overextending its reach now into the hands of the average American and saying, I want more. I realize our tax system is broken, and I think that our tax system needs to be reformed. I strongly believe that you purchase a product regardless of if you're here visiting or you live here, you pay a tax on it.
Right.
And so I there's a fair tax argument, there's a flat tax argument, but I believe that our tax system is broken, and it needs to be reformed.
Well, I think the biggest issue with Obama and the administration is they want to add a flat tax on top of our income tax. You can't do both. I mean, you can either do one or the other. And it appears that they're going to try to do both. They would like to do both.
Honestly, Wayne, that's one of the things that concerns me, and I honestly can't wait to get into D.C. I think that November can't come too quickly for me to get elected, and then January come right around the corner. Because look, this is one of the things that we've got to stop. We've got a government that's overreaching in its power, and it's now putting its hands into the pocket of the average American. It's taking away our source of livelihood. That's just obscene. How could you even fathom imposing a value-added tax on the average American? I think that what we've got right now is close to an oligarchy system of government where you've got an elitist few within the government that are making so much money that they don't even care about the average Joe across the street, and it's just one more burden for him to carry. When you step in and you say you want to add a value tax system, look, if we cut spending on these areas that we don't need to spend money, we will realize instantaneous savings that would help us relieve the tax base, the tax burden on the American family, on the small business, and start bringing businesses back to our shores instead of having them, go overseas, and leave a vast majority of Americans unemployed.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's as far as that, as far as immigration, that's a bigger issue. And you're down there in Florida, so you could probably really speak on that because it affects the job scenarios. It affects the hiring of people. What do you think we can do to improve? From the obviously with the business standpoint of it, how can we improve the immigration and the security in our country?
Well, I don't support illegal immigration at all. I think that we I think we strongly need some solid immigration reforms. America is the greatest country on earth, and you have people lining up from all over the world for hours, days, sometimes weeks, sometimes even waiting to get appointments just to come and sit at American embassies across the world to apply to come here. I'm not against people coming to the United States, but what I do ask is if you're going to come over legally. Let's know who you are. Let's know a little bit about you, and let's know what your thought systems are. When you come in and you mix in with us, should we God forbid that you mix in, you're allowed in, and you're considered a threat to us. And those are the simple kind of things I think that we really need to do. I think the immigration process needs to kind of be revamped to be more to speed up, so that we don't have people waiting and then thinking about alternate ways to kind of get into our country. I definitely support Arizona's immigration law. I think Governor Janbro did an amazing job. That's an example. That's an example of legislation. It was about I forget how many pages it was. I don't know if you remember, 10, 12 pages, something like that.
It wasn't 2,700. I know that.
Exactly. That's an example of of serious legislation, and I think Washington D.C. can take a hint from that. But immigration is something that's very dear to my heart, because I'm a first generation American. Both my parents, were immigrants that came over here, went to college, had me, graduated, and when their visas was up, were up, they left. And so I'm a product of America's good immigration system. I think it worked then. But now I think it needs to be reformed to cope or keep up with the demand for applications for immigrants trying to come over here.
How do you think? How do you look at the way this administration is handling the war? Obviously, today replacing the general with Petraeus. How do you think they've handled the war so far, and what would you do to, obviously, if you're in Congress, to help improve the situation over there?
Well, President Ronald Reagan said something very interesting. When he was asked a similar question, something similar, not exactly alike, but similar. He said, "We need to let our friends know they're our friends, and our enemies know that they're our enemies." And then I'm kind of paraphrasing, but that's exactly what he was alluding to. I found it extremely
true. That's very true. Do you think the way we've treated Israel over the last couple months, again, you can kind of actually get confused on that? Who's our enemy and who's our friend? We've actually treated Israel worse than we've treated Iran over the last few months.
Absolutely. I think this notion of can we all just get along here, it doesn't work. You've got to understand your enemy and what your enemy set out to do to you. And I think that this administration, spearheaded by the White House, has made efforts, to just say, hey, can we all get along and let's try to put the past behind us. But you have people that are sworn enemies, who ingrained in their philosophy, their ideology, their religion, are told to destroy infidels and people that don't believe in their religion. And we are a nation of a different religion, and so we are a target.
Right.
And I thought that it was just it was extremely just morally devastating to see or hear comments that were made about Israel over the last couple of weeks. I mean, my heart just went out to Israel, but I am very confident in the Israeli system of government. I'm confident in their judgment, and I know that they're able to stand for themselves. And regardless of what the United States does, I do hope though that we realize our mistakes very, very quickly, and we go back to supporting Israel.
Right. And as far as education goes, Chris, are you a proponent of more choice for parents, or do we need to continue just basically hand feeding the public school systems at this point?
That's a very, 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 very good question. I was looking at some employment numbers, and it seems like if the Department of Education employs somewhere about 4,100 people across the country, or maybe even more. Maybe I was looking at a number skewed, and I was looking at what their annual budget is. That's a very good question. I really think that the states can actually do a better job. Individual states can do a better job with the educational system than having a one-size-fits-all style education program.
Right.
I think that that on a federal level, Department of Education could probably focus more on research or something else, and just let the curriculum be set by the individual states or actually local governments in this case, that could really hone in on the kids and give them the personalized attention that they deserve, but more importantly, begin to teach America's history, back to our kids, and from the perspective of the states, the local governments, and the rich heritages that they each have. I would like to have a say so in which in the education system, because my tax dollars are going to support it.
Exactly.
And so I think it's ludicrous right now that you take taxes from me to support an education system, and I don't have a say so where my son can go or where my other son can go. It's just give me your money and I'll give you a product. I don't think anyone in their right mind ever walks into a store and kind of hands out money before he knows what kind of product he's getting.
Exactly.
You usually find out the product that you want, you identify it, you're comfortable with it, and then you pay for it. And I think in this system, in our education system, if we gave the states the ability to work on the education system, we might get a more quality product than we're actually getting today.
Right. Last question here. I didn't see. I'm looking through the website. And the only thing I didn't see on here, you didn't mention. Are you a strong protector of the Second Amendment rights?
That's the right to bear arms.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I gotta know that, man. When I'm looking through, the only thing I didn't see in here anything about pro America, pro business. I mean, if you're pro America, you're probably pro guns. But I gotta ask. I mean, you might have a different opinion on it. What's your take on Second Amendment rights?
Believe it or not, I'm actually a card-carrying member of the NRA.
Okay. All right. You're good with me,
I'm
Chris.
a card in the windshield of my car is a ball cap with NRA kind of ingrained in it, and it's I really believe that it's something that has been in our history, our heritage, and I don't think that we need to strip Americans of the ability to bear arms. If you follow crime statistics, you find out that in places where people have access to buying arms, you find out that the percentages of violent crime are actually a lot lower than in communities where where it's actually a lot difficult a lot more difficult to buy a firearm. A couple of years ago, my house was broken into within the 3rd District, because I'm the only Republican in this primary, and for the 3rd District that actually lives in the district.
Wow.
And
okay.
I actually went out and I bought a firearm, and we haven't had any problems since then. And matter of fact, my neighbors are laughing at me because they said it took you that long to get a firearm. We all had one. So,
right.
I was like, okay, I guess I didn't get the joke or whatever. There wasn't a memo that went out. But what I'm alluding to is my neighborhood is a little more peaceful now, because I guess everybody knows that everybody has a gun.
Exactly.
When those rights were taken away from us, then the person that has the gun calls the shots.
Right.
And I don't believe our founding fathers ever intended for it to be an imbalanced, power structure in this country.
Hey, you've got like 30 seconds left here, Chris. I don't want to cut you off. I want you to give everybody your website so they can go check it out and donate.
Sure, absolutely. My website is www.nwasikeforcongress.com, and that's NWAS as in Sam IKE.com. I'm also on Facebook. Facebook is our primary means of communication, and you can search me out on Facebook.
I think we're about to go off the air here.
Chris Nwasike.
We just went off the air. I'm going to post it again on the website. I really do appreciate you calling in tonight, though, Chris. Thanks, man.
No, man, I really appreciate it, man. And man, you've done some great shows. I listened to Star Parker and a couple other shows that you did, man. It was pretty good stuff, man.
Well, I tell you what, we're gonna follow up with you again, because I want, there's never enough time. I'm gonna I want to bring you back on while you're, through this campaign, and good luck, really.
No, I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on the show, man. I
All right,
really appreciate it.
God bless you, and you have a good evening.
God bless you too, bro. Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you so much.
All right, bro.
Bye-bye.